Hi guys, welcome to another episode of LR Live, and in today's episode I'm going to be looking at a few things here that will make repairing and upgrading your Land Rover Defender a lot easier. So let's get straight into it. So we're going to be looking at a few different items here, parts that you may not consider worth replacing when you're doing a job, a repair job or an upgrade job. But because of the inexpensive nature of a lot of these parts, it's going to save you a massive amount of time. Now, every Land Rover Defender, TD5, TDCi, 300, 200, they're all going to suffer from some rot because they're just that old now. And invariably, the bulkhead is the area which goes pretty much on every vehicle. So at some point or another, you're going to have to invest in some repairs. And this bulkhead repair panel is such an easy way to really do a proper job, a solid job, and really clean up that area. So obviously you're going to be wanting to remove all the old material, all the old metal that's rusted. You want to be getting it back to bare metal so it's nice and clean. I would then use either clamps or some tiger seal to put this into position onto the bulkhead, covering everything up. And once it's set in place, you can then start tacking it in place with your welder. You'll find that there's plenty of places to get it on there solid. And because of the design of this, where it butts up against the hinge point on the vent flaps, it's almost an invisible repair. Now, even on the original Defender, you can see where the skin wraps around, so it's not going to look out of place once you fitted this, even if you can see some of the edges. Just a couple of things to remember. Obviously, you need to protect the inside of it so it doesn't rot from the inside out, so get some etch primer on there and make sure that's all coated, and on the outside once it's in position, and then just make sure you put some seam sealer or some tiger seal, just a very thin bead going all the way around so that you're not getting any water ingress behind the panel itself. But a really great investment. It's a much easier job with one of these in place, rather than trying to sort of make the shape out of fiberglass, because it's not going to be strong enough. It's going to come through eventually, and one of these is just plopped straight over the top. It is designed to go over the existing bulkhead, so you don't have to chop away everything just to make sure that this lines up perfectly. You can just place it on the top. So that's my first recommendation for a nice easy repair. Now, another great product that the guys here at LR Parts do is this set here. Now, this is a captive plate that enables you to refit a bumper. Now, if you've got a rotten bumper on your vehicle, taking it apart is probably quite easy if you've got an impact gun or something. So you take the bolts out, and you'd normally have these this retaining plate that's clipped onto the bumper itself. Now, it does work, but it's so difficult to get it to work afterwards with an aftermarket bumper. You know, you're dropping the bolt through the bumper into the pillar at the front, and you just can't get it to locate very easily. Now, this system here is a lot easier. You do have to get your hand behind the bumper and hold this plate into position, but once it's in position, it's nicely greased up as well. Make sure you do that. You just drop your bolt through your new bumper and it sits, and it gets it's nice and easy to get a purchase on there. And you fitted something that's going to be easy to undo because it's brand new and you're not using the old rotten bolts and the rotten fixings. And invariably, if you take that bumper off, that captive plate, that spring-loaded captive plate, will just disintegrate because the clip's just made out of steel, and it rots inevitably anyway. So it's only being held in place with the bolts. It's just really to keep it in location when you're fitting it. These are stainless steel, so again, another really nice upgrade. These are nickel plated, so they'll last a very long time as well. If you buy the kit, you also get plastic caps that sit, so there'll be a nice finish on there, and you've got these really nice stainless washers as well, so the whole job's going to look really nice and tidy, because the last thing you want to do is put a brand new bumper onto your vehicle and you're just using the old bolts. The original bolts that you can buy, the original Land Rover bolts, are easier to fit than these, and it's because you'll see here at the end of this bolt, it's just got a flat piece. Now, on the Land Rover ones, they've actually got a point, and the reason I really like that is because literally when you're dropping it in, because it's got a point, it will sit and locate into that hole much easier. So it's up to you really. If you want a really easy solution, you can buy these plates separately. these captive plates, which I definitely recommend over the standard Land Rover ones. But you might want to invest in some genuine Land Rover Defender bumper bolts, because they've got that point on them. But they're not stainless, they're not as nice, and they are going to be more money. So if you can just persevere with these, once it's on, it's going to look fantastic. One thing that we're always going to be doing is upgrading our lights. So whether or not yours is just de-lambed on the inside, the foil, or you want to go for an upgraded light, what you'll find inside your existing Land Rover, if you've never taken it apart, replaced the lights, there's a plastic bowl that sits inside the vehicle, and then your lamp mounts onto that, and it's got an actual retaining ring around the outside. Now, if you check your retaining ring that sits on the outside of the glass bowl, you'll see it's probably rusted. If it's chromed, it will have probably fallen apart, and it's going to be looking pretty shabby. Now, I've always used, when I've done my Defenders, this kit here. So instead of having the complete bowl, you just get this mounting bracket here. Now, the reason this is good is because if you're upgrading your headlight with, say, an LED unit which has got a fully sealed housing, there's no need to have that bowl, because there's no water getting thrown in to that area that's going to affect the light. Even if you're just going to be upgrading to, or just replacing like for like and fitting a set of headlights that are only going to cost you 20 quid, if you invest in a couple of these, it's going to make the job so much easier. You're going to basically, it's going to look so much better. I really like this black housing as well, because I think it's a little bit sharper than a chromed housing. But also, you're going to be using new screws that come with all the kit, and that's going to make adjusting your headlights a lot easier as well, because everything's new, everything works as it should. So another great little product that's very inexpensive, that's going to make the job of fitting new headlights or replacement headlights to your Defender a lot easier. Now, one job on a Defender that's a real pain in the arse is replacing the vents, or doing some sort of repair or changing things, or getting them to actually move. Because if you've got an old Land Rover Defender, the vents are probably seized on the hinge, and that's because they just use a simple steel uncoated pin. It's a split pin that goes all the way through, and you just open it at one end just to keep it in there. But over time, obviously, the inside of the hinge gets rusty, and your pin gets rusty, and they'll just seize together. So once you've compressed the split pin and you've got it squeezed down as much as possible, use an extra long bolt like the bumper bolts that we mentioned before. You need to get the bigger one you can get, the better, really, because you want to make sure that the smaller end of the bolt is sitting up against the pin. And once that's in place, you just tap it with the hammer. You can tap your pin through, and then obviously you can only tap it up to the actual hinge point on the bulkhead itself. But when you've done that, removing the pin is a lot easier. Now, don't try and do it with just a pair of pliers, because it's very difficult to get a grip. Get some vice grips. Make sure you've got a really good purchase on that pin. Now, once it's all cleaned out and you're ready to fit your new pin, use one of these stainless pins here. Now, they come as a set of 4, because obviously you want to be doing both sides. They are stainless, so once they're in, you're not going to have the same problem ever again. So once you just remove the end of this, get your nut off one end, you slide it into position, get it in as much as you can, and then when it's through, just obviously bit of thread lock I'd recommend, so you haven't got to struggle with spanners. I think there's a 7 or 6 mil these heads, so they are quite fiddly. But a bit of thread lock on each end means you haven't got to over tighten them and damage it, but you just can sit them on there and they'll stay in place. So a really great upgrade if you're doing something with your vent flaps. But the other product that I would recommend is one of these adhesive gaskets. Now, TD5 certainly use these, possibly 300 TDI, I'm not sure. But if you've got the old rubber gasket on there, you just want to basically pull that off and get rid of it. It's probably 20-30 years old by now, so that needs to be replaced. And it doesn't matter whether yours had rubber or this foam, you can replace them both with foam. So you don't have to do anything other than remove the pins. You don't even have to do that, but obviously I would do the whole job. So when the pins are removed, you're going to have the flaps going to be all loose and everything. Don't bother about removing it from that bar that comes through the bulkhead, because that's a really painful job to get everything back in again. So leave that alone. Don't take that apart if you can help it. But it's quite easy, because you can just open this up, you can slide it over the vent flap itself, just remove the backing on this adhesive foam gasket, put it on, and you'll find that your bulkhead flap will just press nicely flush back into position. And it's up to you. If you use the vent flaps, they're going to work better with these pins in, and they're going to seal the weather out with this gasket. But if you're just going to leave them closed, at least you can be sure that it's actually closed and far more weather tight than it was when you just had the old gasket in there. So that is the next item that I definitely recommend. And certainly if you're doing the whole thing, you can buy this as a kit. I believe LR Parts do a kit which includes the 4 pins and 2 of the gasket, so that's what you want to be going for. So again, because of the age of things, there's a good chance your door cards on your Defender are hanging off, or you've tried to get them to fix back on with self-tapping screws, a bit of silicone, all sorts of ideas come to mind when actually trying to get the door cards to sit back on. But there is a product out there that you probably haven't even heard of. It's absolutely minuscule, but let me just tell you what it does. So I've got a genuine £200 from new Land Rover door card here. This is a genuine Land Rover part, and you can just see these little fixings on here. So these are like a mushroom top receiver, and what happens is when the door cards are removed, or they're broken, damaged, these heads on here will break off. So that is a replacement plastic clip. And what happens is, because the head is already removed on your door card, it will sit flush in there. You can use glue to set it in place, but you can also use some very small self-tapping screws, really small screws so they don't protrude to the other side of the door panel, but you can just fix it into position to make sure that it's secure in there. But I'd probably just use Araldite and make sure it sits in place. Once you've got that in place and it's solid, it doesn't matter that it's protruding out slightly. This FIR-TREE has actually got staged grips. So if you didn't have it, it would probably go all the way into the door, into the retaining plastic piece in the door. It would go all the way in, but because you've obviously just got a little bit prouder sitting retainer there, it might just sit out a couple of clicks. But it will work and it will fit. Now these are very inexpensive again. I think they're exclusive to LR Parts, so it's definitely something worth investing in. Certainly if you're doing a nice restoration on your vehicle and you want to use the original door cards. But the key part of this is you cannot get those door cards second hand anymore. They're like rocking horse. And if you had to buy a new one, you're looking at £200 plus VAT. Now aftermarket ones are available. They do have their limitations, so just consider using one of these to do a full repair on your door card. And hopefully we're going to do one of these repairs using these and just show you how effective they are in the future. Once we've got our vehicle here and we're going to be doing some modifications, we'll show you just how well these actually work. It's always worth just investing that little bit of extra money to make the job a lot easier for you when you're doing restoration or repair work to your Defender, because there are parts out there that are relatively inexpensive. You know, you're looking at 20 quid here, £10 there, £5 there, but it's going to make your job so much easier putting everything back together again. And not only does it make it easier, it'll last longer because it's new, it's fresh, it looks great. So always have a little look and see if there's some parts out there like the ones I've shown you today that will make your job easier and do it in a cheap and effective way. So I hope you've enjoyed the episode. If you have, please do give me a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. As I said before, we're going to be doing some discount codes and some competitions to win some of the products that we're showing you on this channel. But for now, wish you all the best in your restoration work, and I'll catch you on the next one.